And we're back with episode 13 of Better Radio. My name is Liam. This is...
I'm Brian.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course. Brian's also here. And we have another guest here today. Care to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name's Tim Campia.
Ooh, Tim Ciampa. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing pretty well. I was telling you before we were on mic that I went to a Bar Mitzvah for the first time last night, so I went a little bit hard, and I'm recovering today. But
on a scale from 1 to 7, how was the Bar Mitzvah?
It was the best Bar Mitzvah I've ever been to.
Good. Big fan. That's
but
good.
I want to leave room for expansion there, so I'll say it was a 7.
A 7. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. Ideal. It sounds like you had a good night.
It was.
Glad to hear it.
It was like the kind of night where you're like, I'm going to take full advantage of this open bar. It was like going to it was like, when your significant other brings you to a wedding for somebody that you've never met, that was kind of like the vibe.
Yeah, definitely. So Bar Mitzvah, that's it's a party atmosphere. I've never been to one. So obviously all I've ever seen is like pop culture.
Same.
Where it seems to be like, the 13-year-old, right? Yeah.
Yep, and you forget how young 13 is.
Yeah, we went to our sister's volleyball game, and she's a freshman in college, and I'm 25, Liam's 22.
21, about to turn 22.
Well,
22 by the time this is live.
Yeah.
22 by the time this is live, yeah.
And I was like, what? Why do freshmen in college look like babies now?
Yep.
Like, I don't get it. I don't know. Aging's weird, man.
It to me, if I didn't know it was a bar mitzvah and you just were like, look at the children on the dance floor, how old would you guess they are? I would be like 8.
8, right?
8.
It's the fluoride in the water. It's what
and the chemtrails.
And the chemtrails, yeah, I've heard.
Sure.
I've heard that, yeah. All right, Tim. So, who are you?
Who are you?
Who am I? I am a... Wow. I can't identify myself.
You are a
concisely.
very funny stand-up comedian, friend of mine.
You're too kind.
From the Worcester. We met in the Worcester comedy scene.
That's right.
I believe it was Nick's Bar. I saw you go on for. It was one of the first times I saw you. I just saw you crush, and I'm like, well, this sucks. There's another good kid on the scene. Awesome. This is great.
You've seen me enough times after that to know I've never repeated that success. So, yeah, that was the only time I think I could legitimately say I killed on stage, was that first time you saw me. And, we've talked a good amount about being kind of new and trying to figure out who you want to be stylistically as a comedian and trying to figure out how much of a kind of one-liner type approach do you want to take versus how much of it do you want to be story-based. And so I feel like I'm still pretty new to the scene. Like the first time I did stand-up was like last November, I think, but I kind of took some time off for a little bit. So I'd say on and off, I've maybe been doing it for 6 or 7 months. So I think I'm definitely still like super green and trying to figure out who I am as a performer. But, I have enough good nights that it keeps me coming back.
Yeah. Well, we like having you there on the scene. So
what inspired you to get into comedy? What was the moment where you're like, I'm gonna do this?
Yeah, I've always been really into comedy. I've wanted to do this for like 10 years. I'm 33 now, so when I was out of college, that was probably when I first really got into comedy. Some friends gave me a Mitch Hedberg album. I forget which one it was. It's the one that has like the Sprite recipe joke on it and the real estate.
My introduction to a lot of comedians was through the Pandora music app. So I don't know like how a lot of special, like what jokes fell on which special, but I do know that joke. Yeah, big fan of Mitch Hedberg.
And then also I was really into Jerry Seinfeld's I'm Telling You for the Last Time, which is like
good.
Those were the two first comedy albums I ever like listened to back to back. And anyway, I as far back as college was like writing jokes, and I always like to riff with my friends and all that, but I just never got the balls to just get up and go on stage until last year. I think part of it was just like boredom in my life,
Right.
and it's
Yeah, I mean, that's where it came from me. It was just like I wanted to do something new, you know.
it's so funny to me too because in the scene that we're in, so many people you can tell they get on stage because they're like, I went through abuse or trauma, or I've got depression, I'm suicidal, all this, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm here because of boredom and privilege. Like,
Which, some may argue is way worse than any of the bad stuff
Absolutely.
that ever happened to any of those people.
I can't blame anything except pure narcissism.
Yeah, well, that's
Hey
as
man,
good a
I
reason
have
as any.
3 podcasts, so yeah, I'm well versed in pure narcissism
Oh,
for sure.
Fair enough.
So I can relate to that. So what has been kind of like, what did you expect when you started, and then how is that like juxtaposed to the reality of starting in a place like Worcester as an open micer to a, moving on in your career as a comedian?
Yeah. Well, I found it to be less scary than I thought it would be, for sure. I thought it would be like very, very harsh, where you'd get on stage and people would like boo you and shit, and that just doesn't happen at open
Right.
mics because
No.
everybody knows that everybody's like trying to work it out. But I don't know. I kind of went in thinking worst case scenario, what happens if you get on stage and you're terrible.
Right.
And so that was a relief to find out pretty quickly that people are pretty tolerant of the fact that you're just getting up there and trying stuff. The other thing that was kind of surprising was how hard it is to nail a perfectly written joke.
Right.
And you might have a concept that like works so well in your head, and then you get on stage and it's just crickets, and that's what. And the other thing is we're similar on this, I think, too, that I love clever joke writing. I want something that's like a great twist or something that you didn't see coming that tickles me, my comedy funny bone, for lack of a better word. And so I got to a place where it was easy for me to confuse clever with funny, because sometimes I'll write something that I think is super clever and it doesn't work on stage because it's just not funny in the same way. You look out and people are smirking because they're like, oh yeah, that's pretty clever,
Yeah,
but it's
well
not
done, but like it's not getting me into giggles.
it's
you
like
know?
the funny is money, wit is shit thing.
That's good.
and
I haven't actually heard that before.
I think it's they just say it to like comedy writers that if your instinct is to be punny or just try to be witty, that's not necessarily what gets the laugh.
That only
I
gets
think it's a
so
Mel
far.
Brooks quote.
It's a good line. I am with you. We're like when I first started doing comedy, some of my favorites of all time, like Jesselnick, Christopher Titus, Bo Burnham, stuff like that. I mean, those kind of 3 different types of comedians.
Sure.
But the thing I gravitated to the most, that I thought was the coolest, was like, like the fewest words you could say to get to the punchline, and have it be something like people could think about. You know what I mean? And think it's funny. And I always enjoyed writing the twist. I guess it's like the style of joke writing is the joke teller. That was like maybe the most like the initial like way people did comedy, which was just telling a small little like a few lines that create a joke. So I'm right up like your alley in that regard. That was always my favorite style of it. But I feel for me, like some people will like try to limit you that way. They'll think that would be all you can do. I don't know. It was hard to kind of trick my brain into not writing that way. Now I'm trying to branch out a little bit more, do more storytelling, more animation, like on stage and stuff like that. Be more of a character, I guess. I don't know. I guess that's more because joke writing, clever joke writing is something like, okay, anyone can write jokes, like anyone can do the jokes I've like written, there's no real personality. It's all just, it's like substance over style, I guess, but style in comedy goes a long way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But I think there are people that do a good balance of that. Like I think John Tilson, that's his name, right?
Yeah,
he's so good, but I feel like he he very much is in that joke teller style, but at the same time has a very clear persona and personality that comes through and that you can connect to apart from the jokes that he's telling. I've said this to you before, that I think if you've got the mind to write those clever types of jokes, fight the instinct to move away from that completely, as opposed to just kind of incorporating it into whatever it is you want to be as a more well-rounded comedian.
I mean, maybe I will say it doesn't, like, I've written storytelling jokes, I've written jokes, and like in the way we're talking about it, and it does feel a lot better when you when you can get when you can get like 3 lines into a hilarious like punch, you know.
Do you think I feel like it's way harder for me to predict if something story based is going to work versus
so much harder.
A clear punchline, and that's very frustrating because I liked almost the mathematics of joke writing, where you're like, that's like when you have a great punchline, you know it.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas if you're telling a story and you think there's something funny about it, and then it doesn't land, you're like, fuck, then I don't even know what I'm doing up here, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely some of my worst experiences doing comedy have been involving trying something I thought was going to work as like a longer storytelling bit and realizing like, oh, I'm just kind of giving people context for 45 seconds, you know?
Well, here's a question along that line. So obviously as someone who does primarily comedy online, you know, sketches, you know, just general comedic videos, it's a lot easier because people who are into my style of comedy can find me. Are there ever moments where you're like, you tell a joke and you're like, in your head, I know this is funny, I know this works, but for whatever reason this particular crowd didn't react? And how do you kind of reconcile that in yourself and being like, I know this works, but they didn't laugh? What's the kind of thought process there, if you've had that kind of an experience?
I certainly have, with Tim, if you want to go for this first.
I tend to be really hard on myself. So no matter what the crowd is, if something doesn't work, I'm like, I might try it one other time, but I lean pretty heavily towards that didn't work, and it probably wouldn't work with any audience. And maybe that is the wrong instinct, but they say that you should be able to work and do comedy in any room. And so to the extent that I would write something that could work in a certain situation but doesn't work in any of the open mics that I've done, I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to get to a room where that could work, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't even know how to find the right audience that's every weirdo that would happen to like that joke, to the point where I could tell it to them. And I think Gary Goldman has a tip about that, where he's like, if you have weird jokes, like these weird esoteric jokes that you're doing at open mics and almost nobody's laughing, but there's like one weirdo in the back, like keep holding on to those until you've built an audience who likes you for those types of things.
Style, yeah.
But you got to kind of like thread the needle of building that audience, which comes through a combination, which I guess just comes from like balancing out those instincts with stuff that's going to work more broadly. So yeah, I think it's a little bit different than, like you said, than sketch comedy, where your audience seeks you out. And then the other piece of this is that when you're doing an open mic, like we were saying, most of the time the room's like 90% comics, and that does make a difference. I think that makes it a tougher room, but it also makes you a better comedian, because if you get a room full of comics to die at a joke of yours, then you probably got a pretty good. You've done more like actual shows. I haven't done any, so. I don't know if you've had the opposite experience where like something works with comics but not with regular people. But
so I can tell you know, I could see you having like on some shows some similar interactions to what I'm about to describe. Sometimes, you know, a joke. Okay, so you're talking about mics, right? Doing shows on mics, and yeah, sometimes it'll be 90% comics with 30% of them listening to you. and then when you get the whole crowd, suddenly everyone's, it means everyone's paying attention to you and you've earned their attention, right? There have been jokes that, like, I'm confident in them working, right? I've said them like multiple times, finally I bring them out to a show, and sometimes they'll crush on a show, but sometimes, given the content, some people at that show are not there for that type of content. And you'll say a joke, and you'll be able to hear a nail drop. I remember one time it was a pretty big crowd at the Woo-Ha. It was like 70 people or something. And one of my jokes that I had like been doing for a while, like one of the ones I could kind of rely on, I'd worked on shows, smaller shows, bigger shows even, did not work for this show at all. And I've listened to the audio. I'm like doing very well in between this joke and immediately after, because I like kind of acknowledged it and moved on. But for like a few moments, I'm up there and I'm like, why did that not work? I've said it this way 100 times. It's the cadence, the style. Sometimes, man, you'll be in a crowd that's not necessarily looking for the content that you want to deliver. Now, they're with me or on board with about everything else I said. It was a good set, and I caught myself later thinking about it. I didn't even think about the 9.5 minutes that I did really well on the set, right? I thought about the 15 to 30 seconds that was like awkward to me. And in my back of mind, I wanted to just say like, yeah, fuck you guys. That shit was so funny. You know what I mean? Like I've proven it, I've tested it, and it's weird. So, sometimes they're not there for you, but if you are consistent and honest with who you are and your jokes, I feel like there's way more value in that. Maybe not every crowd's for you, but in the same way Gary, has said it, that there are people out there that like that. So,
and pretty much any comic, like established seasoned comic out there will tell you that, even with their entire set being something that's validated and worked in most places, have gone out and done shows where they bomb start to finish. Yeah. So I think that's probably a good instinct that if it fails one time out of 10 or whatever, then it's still worth doing. But that's interesting, that the idea that people just weren't there for a certain type of material, because I have tendencies, I almost like edgelord tendencies a little bit, to talk about things like politics or what's the other? religion, which we were talking about a little bit more before off mic, because I've got really, I think, interesting histories with those things, especially religion. I was raised really religious and am now not, and I feel like I've, like you were asking before, like, can I envision an audience for something? I think if the room was full of people like me who used to be religious and are now not, that I have jokes that would destroy. But that's such a weird niche audience. So it's almost like a waste of time writing in that vein. And then politics is just like such a crapshoot, because you have no idea who's, even if you're not taking a point of view that's controversial or alienating or divisive. It's just like, if you're talking about a topic that divides people, at least 50% of the people in the room are going to be like on the edge, like, oh no, what's he going to say? Is he going to say the thing that I agree with or the thing that I don't agree with? And so that's been interesting, because I like want to talk about those types of topics, but trying to talk about them in a way that's like I have a bit about gun control, and I try to make I don't necessarily shy away from like letting you know what I think about the issue, but I don't want the punchlines to have to rely on that. I don't want you to have to agree with me for the joke to be funny. And so that's been a really interesting exercise. And then some things I'm just like, that's too dark or too like I had a bit about embryos that I was doing for a while, and like what it would be. But it never like worked that well because it's too.
I was a fan.
It's like it's the
Liam's the one guy in the back.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, that's why I don't know when I remember the first time I saw you, I was like, oh, I liked him. You know, I think I like his style. So that's what I mean.
But yeah,
go on about the bit.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm very
the premise is like. Embryos, the majority of them that people conceive end up dying under natural conditions.
Right.
So if you're like my parents, who are they think an embryo is a person and they believe in heaven, that means heaven is like 90% embryos. And so
that's like a good point.
So it's like riffing on that. Like, what would that be like? You have to imagine being at a party and getting stuck talking to an embryo and like that type of stuff. But it's very. That's not something everybody's there for.
No.
Right.
You know,
it's not something everyone wants to think about.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean it's not funny. You know, it's
sure.
it's a crowd thing. You know, where I could hear something like that, and like that's a funny, unique, thought-provoking idea. You know, like it's a way of looking at it.
But it's also like you have to calibrate how dark you want to go with it. Because I had like a visual joke in there that's like, what does that look like? Oh, it looks like a giant tray of popcorn shrimp or something like that. And you're like, Jesus, that's so fucked up and dark in a way that like most people, especially, I mean, even I'd say maybe half the comics might be down for that. But then if you did that at a show, I think people would be like, even if I ultimately agree with you, that's like too fucked up.
It's harsh. Yeah, I know. There are some comedians out there that I don't know. I've seen do some really hardcore stuff recently, like at Mike's and
Alan Fitzgerald.
Yeah, okay, I'll say it. Alan Fitzgerald. I love Alan Fitzgerald.
Yeah, he's extremely funny.
But he is it. I remember I told you after we saw him go on last time, I was like, what a brave man. You know what I mean? Like
that was the only time I've ever seen him struggle. Yeah. But that was the hardest I've ever seen him push.
It was crazy. I was in fucking tears. I thought it was just fucking funny as shit. But yeah, that's a good point. You know, it's a not for everyone, but like for the people that are with you, I think really appreciate it. You know.
You know what I've found to be really surprising about doing comedy is I for some reason thought mean-spirited jokes would do better than they have for me. Because there's like a lot of roast comedy out there. There are a lot of comedians that have kind of like a mean streak to them who are successful. Sure. But I felt like every time I've written a joke that's mean, it really doesn't land. And I think part of that embryo bit is that too, is like to what extent am I being just fucking mean,
just talking about
how boring embryos are and that kind of thing. Or like I had especially if you write a long bit with that in mind, like I had one that I tried at Dark Rose a few months ago about bikers and how like sloppy I think bikers are, and I had like a bunch of jokes, and I get like halfway through this 3-minute bit that I had written, and I'm like, nobody is on board for this general idea that bikers are sloppy. Do you have like a big biker demographic listenership?
Actually, all of our listeners.
Yeah, Hell's Angels are actually a sponsor.
Yeah, sponsor.
I had one punchline that was like, it's weird that they call bikers organized crime. Imagine like a cop investigating a scene. Like, do you think this is organized crime? They're like, no, this is clearly the work of somebody who doesn't know how to button a shirt up all the way. Like, my friend was like, you're gonna get your ass kicked.
Yeah, don't do that at like some bars.
Yeah.
Like, but
definitely.
And it's mean spirited to a degree that's like, this is maybe a little too in the weeds, but I think you're not aware of how much your background plays into your comedy too. So I think there's like class elements of me dunking on bikers, because I just was raised like upper middle class my whole life, and I just wasn't exposed to that type of a thing. So for me to get on stage and make fun of wet t-shirt contests is more than just me making fun of wet t-shirt contests. It's like, who is this fucking kid who never had to work for anything in his life, who's never had to sell meth through his biker gang.
I voluntarily sell meth, but I'm with you on that. There's a whole other like element to a lot of this where I didn't anticipate at all. Where it was like, I just wanted to go up there and tell jokes, but like suddenly it's Liam Maher telling jokes, and it's on one hand, maybe the hand that's important is like, that is your voice. If that's really what you think, that's your angle. You know what I mean? That's something people can't really they can diminish, but they can't take away from you.
And that's the most hurtful stuff to have fail. If you're like, that's just raw me and it didn't work. It's like, oh fuck.
It's like, man, I tried. That was me. But
and to try to do more of a story-based approach to comedy, that is so much more who you are and what your personality is. And so I think that's why it's so scary and hard when you first start setting out, because if you know this, you have a ton of jokes that are like undeniably great jokes.
Oh, thank you very much.
But when you move away from that and you're like, let me tell this story that I think is funny, and it's not as clear cut of a punchline. It's just like, do you think this is as funny as I do? And how much of that is reliant upon the fact that you think I'm just purely funny as a person? Because I think that's the one thing, if I could have, I would trade anything for it. Because I genuinely don't describe or think of myself as a funny person. I think of myself as like a clever, witty person. And so when I see somebody get on stage and they have both, I'm just like, fuck you.
Yeah.
If you can just tell a story and make it work on the pure power of your personality, I'm so envious of that. Because I just do not have that. But I think I can write a joke.
Well, see, the thing is, I also like, initially my storytelling bits like that I've kind of been trying to work on and whatever, I think, and this is just because we're both fairly new, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we're both like less than a year into it, really, of taking it seriously, and
2 year in comics talking about their
exactly our seasons, like our season of comedy that we
anybody in the scene who would listen to this is probably like, these fucking guys.
These fucking
I do like to think that this right now is like this show as a whole, 13 episodes in, is like something for people who are thinking about trying, an open mic and then kind of hearing what that's like.
Yeah.
So that's true. So don't worry if you're like, I'm not.
We can give the new guy position.
Yeah. Right, yeah. That's what I like to think of it as, because we started off a lot when you were starting to run that mic you do at the Dark Rose.
The Dark Rose, yeah.
So it was a lot like, how do you start an open mic? What do you do when you go there? That kind of stuff. So this is a continuation of going on. So
okay.
Don't feel like, who am I to talk about this? Because it's your experience, and I do think there's an audience for this and for people to hear about that.
And especially for you being as young as you are, like, I wish I had somebody tell me when I was coming out of college and like thinking about doing comedy, that someone was like, do it, it's not as scary as you think.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I came to Worcester at a good time, I think. As you have said, I think that Worcester's just kind of a special scene. I mean, granted, it's the only scene I've spent I've been as intimate with, but I've tried others. I've tried going to others, and whether it's political or it's who or whatever, which is a very real thing. I didn't feel like there was any barriers in Worcester. I didn't feel like there were people let me go up there. And you're the same way. Like when we first went out there, we were fucking weirdos. You know what I mean? We went up and people liked it. They were like, hey, this kid's fucking weird, but like I liked what he's saying. Worcester was like super welcoming, just kind of in general. I felt, but I also think it was because the show, like the scene is kind of, it was developing. It was finding its legs. It was finding its regulars. And it had been, according, like, I mean, I don't know if you've talked to some of the other comics in the scene about how like long they've been doing it, but a lot of them started around the same time. Like Jesse, Dave, and Ben. Lou, I think all started like 2.5 years ago or something.
Wow!
And they all just kind of like started around the same time.
Yeah, man. Because when I was doing open mics in Worcester, when I was in college, there was nothing. There was there were 2 music mics, and then it was like, hey, I'm gonna do comedy here, and they were like, I guess we can't stop you from doing that. Sure, but now there's that. There's like a poetry mic.
Yeah, no, there's Nick's,
so much.
there's Nick's, Beat Nick's, the Raven with the music / comedy open
Still
mic.
think I was the first comedian to ever perform at the
You
Raven.
you very well
because they gave me a weird look when I asked.
You very well could have been. Then
Is that a mixed mic?
Is it now?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Because of like right now, it's mixed. As I'm usually the only comic that shows up, but they know me there. Yeah. You should definitely check it out. It's good to stretch your legs. So let you go on for 15.
Over the Raven.
So
Jesus.
Yeah. For me, dude, when I first started, it was a big deal because for me, because every other mic they give you 5 minutes, and that can be. Okay, am I trying new stuff, or am I just trying to fill the 5 minutes with stuff? And then you fill the 5 minutes with stuff. Then you're just doing mics with that 5 minutes, trying to make it tighter and tighter. But when I went to the Raven, they're like, yeah, you go on, and suddenly I'm doing crowd work, I'm interacting with people. It's all about just getting like comfortable, acting more like yourself up there, I think. Really went a long way for me. But on top of the Raven, there's the Comedy Attic every other Thursday. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something even. Oh, and Vincent's. So there's 5 mics that I'm even thinking of in Worcester right now. And then there's the shows. Oh, and then Sunday is the Woo-Ha. And so it's almost every night of the week you can go and do comedy. It's
insane.
Definitely changed. And
it was in it. To your point too about it being a welcoming scene. I when I first did a mic, it was in Providence. I did like a couple back to back in Providence, and it was rough. Like it was not. It was really sparsely attended, and it felt a little cliquey to me. Like there were a decent amount of comics there, but they were all like in a back room, like not, you know what I mean? So there were only like 3 or 4 people like actually watching, and nobody talked to me afterwards or anything like that. Despite being like, yo, this is my first time doing a mic or whatever. The first time I went to Worcester was like the exact opposite. There were like, first of all, it was at Vincent's, and there were a decent amount of people in the room. It was like the first time I really got laughs. And then I think it was Paul Cyphers came up to me afterwards just to be like, hey, I've never seen you before. Like, welcome to the scene. You should check out Worcester open mics or whatever the Facebook group is. And so just like night and day experience compared to what happened in Providence. Not to shit all over Providence, but there are a couple mics that I'll still go back to there sometimes, because having that intimate an audience is like, if something works there, it's probably going to work at somewhere else, like Nick's or whatever. But it went a long way toward making me feel like, oh, I want to do this longer term instead of just like trying it a few times and giving up.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you on that. I haven't. I actually got to check out Providence more, see some stuff, but I think that's what made Worcester special, at least to me, and the being able, like, a lot of us just hang out after at the bar for hours, it's fun, and we're friends, and I don't know if I can say I would have had the same experience if I were to have checked out maybe a Boston or Providence,
All right, so on top of being a comedian,
a super fucking funny comedian,
you're also a game maker.
Yes, in the sense that I've made a game.
Well, what is this game?
Yeah, so
let me show it to the camera.
It's called Drinking Buddies.
Oh, no.
I can give you like later. Kind of the making of it, I guess. Like years ago, I had an idea for like a video game that would be kind of like Mario Party, but like a drinking game. Right. So like house party type vibe, and started talking with one of my friends who's like an app developer about like, could we make an app based game that's like a drinking game or whatever. And as we were thinking about like good names for that app, the name Drinking Buddies came to me, and then the concept for this game kind of we spitballed it from there, and it became what it is now, which is a card-based strategic drinking game that it's like color matching based. So I can give you. Let's
break it down.
Yeah, let's break it open.
So if it wasn't 10 5:30 on a Sunday morning, we'd be getting sloshed.
Yeah. And so there's a couple things that you do with it. Liam, can I task you with opening this? You can play with cups or these little cards that Liam is opening, but
Attempting to.
the core dynamic, I guess, is the buddy system.
Right.
So it's color based, and what you do is everybody gets a face up buddy card.
Right.
And let's get a different color in here. Players who have the same color as your drinking buddies.
Right.
And that means that they have to drink when you drink, and they get to refill a shot when you refill a shot.
Right.
You each have 5 shots, and the game ends the first time anybody's emptied all of them.
Okay.
And you want to be the player with the most full shots left over at the end of the game. So you the strategy comes into play where you don't want the game to end if you're not winning yet, and you want to try to keep it going. So what you do every turn is you draw a new buddy card.
Okay.
And you put it anywhere you want. So I can put it on top of Liam's card, yours or mine, and it kind of changes the color dynamic of the game.
Okay. Still not able.
And you know what, Liam? You probably don't, unless we're actually going to play this. I don't even know that you need to.
I've already committed so much.
Okay, fair enough.
Do you want to play around?
Sure.
Let's play around.
It's tough. You do actually need a minimum of 4 players, but we can have a phantom player over here.
He's gonna win.
So I guess I can talk you through a round of play.
Yeah, it's good to go.
So I'll give you 5 of these. Let's just do 3 to keep it short and sweet, right? Anytime you take a drink, you just flip one of those over.
Gotcha.
Normally you'd play with 5 of these cards, but I think this will be enough for now.
This should suffice, yes.
And then I'm going to give you 3 of these cards.
Liam, can you clap for me so I can sync this footage later? Cool. Thanks, man.
That's you. It's our phantom friend. Yeah. This is great audio, right? Me dealing cards.
We have.
It's almost like an ASMR.
The video, too, and we can also skip forward. We can edit.
Jump it around.
Yeah. All right. So, again, you want to have the most full cups left over when the game ends, and the game ends the first time anybody has emptied all of them. So that's kind of the idea.
Okay.
So I'll start. I'll draw a card. It's purple. Doesn't really do anything for me, so I'm gonna just put it here. It doesn't really change things for right now, and I'm gonna make you take a drink, Liam, by playing this bottoms up.
I drop this guy.
Yeah.
All right, I'll put him over here.
Or you just flip it over.
I just flip it. Oh, it's good. Oh, that's good. I like that.
And then you go next.
All right, so drawing card.
Yeah. And so we can talk through the strategy if you want. So, is that purple?
Also purple, yeah.
Yeah, so if you put that on Liam, for example, you could make him drink, and then I have to drink too because we're buddies.
Okay.
I like it. Okay, let's see what we're doing here.
You put that on top of that one,
Put that
so
on
it
top?
changes your color, basically.
Got you. Flip that, so you got to flip one as well?
Yeah, and then this is our phantom player.
Ghost player.
He doesn't really help him, so he's just going to play that on himself. And then what's he going to do? He probably wants to take you out because you've got more full cups than him.
Almost.
So, let's see. He's gonna... Oh, this is not a great hand.
This phantom guy.
He's going to play a refill card on himself.
Okay.
But he can't refill because he's already got 3. But he doesn't really have a better move. So
First round, yeah.
All right, Liam, it's your turn now. You draw a buddy card.
Here we go. So I got a red card, which is strategy-wise. Could I also refill one of my cups? I'm down 2.
What do you have?
Right. So I play one of them. I got bottoms up, make one player. So do I pick one of these 3 cards, someone to do?
Yeah, so you
Got
play
you.
this, and then you pick one of those 3 cards to play.
Got you.
So
All
you
right.
probably want to play the red card on me, right? So, 'cause
Oh,
I have
actually-
3, and so does he.
Yes, bottoms up,
'Cause
make
then
one
we
player
both
and
would
their
have
buddies.
to drink, right?
Got you. So who are you
What's
buddies
your other
with?
one?
I got designated driver, happy hour. So me and Tim could both
Yeah.
refill a shot. I'm probably going to do that because I only have 1 shot left.
But you don't. So here's what I would recommend.
Okay.
If you play this card, you're now not buddies with anybody, and you have a card in there that says everybody except me and my buddies drink.
Oh, I see that now. Oh, okay. So I have no buddies. So I'm going to play this one. So making you and the Phantom player and Brian.
Or you
have a
could do this and then play your refill card, and
To
now
get me
it doesn't
another,
it doesn't help me, but it still helps you. So you could do either of those things. But from like a strategy
I'm
perspective,
gonna play that, and I want to refill one because I only
Yeah.
have one. I only have
Yeah,
one
good
drink
call.
left. That's the move.
and you wouldn't have to do that as early if you were playing with 5 shots,
Right.
but yeah.
Okay, I'm into it.
Cool. And so the game just continues on from there until one player has drank
Yeah.
all, or until there's one person left.
Exactly, and I think it's clear the strategy of like if you make 2 people buddies, you can give
Yeah.
out more drinks.
Yeah.
But the other thing that didn't really happen yet is like if Liam was down to 1 shot, I've got 2, you've got 3, so you're beating me. I might make him my buddy so I could play a refill card and extend the game and
extend
like keep it going.
Oh.
a little bit. So you might like want to help people sometimes.
Yeah,
It's kind of
yeah.
like a fair weather friend dynamic.
Yeah,
So
we got to
that's-
definitely play this like with drinks sometimes. This is a pretty fun game. I
Thanks,
like the
man.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
And then
if
there's
you'd
the
be
buddy
down to,
system is good. Like it's clever. It's also it makes sense. Brings the whole game together. But I could see with like
Thanks, man.
with a group of at least 4 people just putting down. It'd be fun.
Yeah, if you'd be down to come back sometime when we have like one of the group meetings, with all Wicked Good Everything, we do live streams and stuff
nice.
like that. If you'd be
I would love
interested.
that, yeah.
Yeah, it
absolutely.
sounds like a great idea. Wicked Good Everything is, of course, the YouTube channel that this
Yeah,
is put on.
the brand
Yeah.
that Wicked
Nice.
Good Podcast
Yeah.
is under. So that's very cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for
that
playing.
with us. Yeah, no, that was fun. We're definitely
And
gonna have to do that.
so you kickstarted this game, correct?
Yeah, we kickstarted it last year. Small. I mean, we basically were like, what's the absolute minimum we would need to make this, to make enough copies that it would be, we could sell it at the same cost we paid for
Right.
each copy. And we overfunded by a decent amount. I think we were at like 130% of our
Oh,
funding
wow.
goals.
Hey,
So.
that's big.
Yeah, and it was like mostly strangers, which I was really surprised by. Like Kickstarter just has a ton of great built-in marketing and stuff, and so if you're like into drinking games, you're probably going to get a notification from Kickstarter that's like, check out this game.
Right.
And
So what was the process behind deciding one to go with Kickstarter and then setting that all up and fulfilling goals and that kind of a thing?
yeah, I don't remember actually what made me go in that direction. One of my friends was like, oh, well, you should do, I want to say Indiegogo or one of those other ones that lets you keep whatever money
Right.
is contributed. And I was like, I don't know. I part of me had a hunch that maybe Kickstarter would have more of a built-in audience than some of those other ones. Like if I probably would have done Indiegogo if I was like, I'm going to rely on family and friends for this or
Right.
whatever. I think that's ultimately why I went with Kickstarter. I also felt like they had a ton of good tools and like instructions on their website for like, here's how you make a successful Kickstarter. We recommend doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And just having that kind of a handbook, especially for me being a first timer on Kickstarter, I think that made me feel a lot more comfortable with it. So that was kind of the thought process there. When we were thinking about like what the goals would be, we kind of thought about, obviously the game makes sense as a reward for the Kickstarter, but
Yeah.
what other types of things could we do? T-shirts is kind of a throwaway idea, but we
Right.
were like, yeah, let's make some Drinking Buddies T-shirts, and then we made a bunch of shot glasses because we're like, that's like a core component of the
it makes
game.
That's a good-
perfect
yeah.
sense, yeah.
So that
Good
yeah,
idea.
we had a couple different tiers, and you got your shot glasses with them or your cups. I have this like dream of one day having like a beer Olympics type thing where people play this game but it's like super official. You've got like actual shot glasses that are branded, and you've got. Or one of the other things that we've done that I think is awesome. My friend Charlene came up with this idea when she was playing with her parents. Is that you can gamble with this. So like whenever you drink, think of this as a poker chip, and you throw it into the pot instead of flipping it over, and then whenever you refill, you pull one out. But the idea is like whoever wins at the end of the game, you get those chips. So you could have like a big tournament style drinking buddies game. So I'd love to do that at some point. Just have some like super like a flight paddle for, like you might get at a microbrewery or something like that. That's kind of future state. As of right now, we're just doing kind of small sales through our website. We did. We went to the Boston.
What's the website? So people
sure. So we have a little bit of like a brand too. It's at wasted-minds.com. So we sell we sell this game there, but we also have a number of podcasts that I do with my wife and some of our friends on a number of different topics that are all linked from that website too. So
go check it out.
Yeah, check out wasted-minds.com, and you can buy this game here if it sounds at all interesting to you.
Very cool. Sorry, did you want
you mentioned to me you recently just did a convention.
Yeah, we went to the Boston Festival of Independent Games 1 or 2 weekends ago now, which I had never done before, and I'd gone, but I'd never been an exhibitor there, and that was really cool because I've play tested this game a bunch with my friends, and in some cases friends of friends, but I had never just had strangers come and play the game. And that's one of the things that we did in our booth. We set up a demo table and just had people come throughout the day and sit down and play the game and like get really into it and buy copies and talk about how excited they were to go to like whatever party they were going to that night and take that game with them. And that was like super rewarding. My first time seeing like strangers just play and enjoy the game. Cool. You know.
So like, how much does it cost?
It's $20.
So affordable, guys. You got a 20.
Yeah.
Get over there. Come on.
Because we're not. I mean, like I said, we're not trying to. I'm not trying to be a millionaire off this game. You know what I mean? I just want. It's a fun hobby of mine. Like I want. If I have people playing it and sending me pictures of them enjoying it on Instagram and all that, like that's literally all I want out of it. So, I think 20 is like really affordable,
very reasonable for a card like game like this for sure.
And then you can play like we were playing with these little cards that you can flip over, but it does look really cool if you're sitting around a table with 6 people that have like full little cups of whatever they're drinking, and it's got kind of a cool aesthetic. Different and a different look to it than I think other card or drinking games that you might play.
Definitely. And so, other than obviously this podcast, what have you done for like marketing, trying to get the word out about? I'm sure you don't close your set being like, buy my game.
I know, that would be so weird, wouldn't it? No, I don't. We done some limited Facebook ads, but mostly that was during the Kickstarter campaign. Otherwise it's been mostly like word of mouth. We did this festival. That was probably the biggest thing that we've done. And then we promoted on all the podcasts that we do too. So.
And so obviously you talked about wanting to have like a professional style like league someday. What's the end goal for either Wasted Mind, does it right?
Wasted Minds,
Minds, and this game in general.
Logo. So I for a while was thinking I was going to have this be just generally an entertainment brand. We talked about having the tagline be something like "entertainment under the influence" or something like that, because like a lot of our content is kind of beer or drinking related, and I like beer, so that's just kind of like fits in with my personal brand a little bit, I think. And
what do you like to play with when you play? What beer?
This always makes me sound so fucking pretentious.
Here we go. I'm excited.
I love Belgian beers mostly.
Okay.
I love like Abbey style ales and like Le Chouffe, if you ever had that style beer. But I also really love German beers like Hefeweizens and pretty much anything they make in the Munich area. That's like
Right.
my jam. But I'll drink any beer. I like IPAs too, and like every other beer snob. And so I mostly play with beer. And in fact, we strongly encourage people not to play this with anything but
I was about to ask.
something low ABV.
Well, yeah, I remember when I first. I'm not the biggest beer drinker in the world. It was just, I don't know, I have never acquired the taste for it. But like, so when I play drinking games, I usually play with like a mixed drink at the very least. So I usually get a little more than everyone else.
Yeah, so
a little more out of my games, if you will. But when you gave me a copy, I was going through it, and I was like, man, I don't know if I could pull that off in like without dying in a good way, but I'm definitely gonna try it still.
We had, when we were like playtesting this early on with some friends, we didn't have these little like shot cups yet, so we had were these, like, we went to the store and bought these plastic cocktail cups that were like kind of big, like you'd have a mixed drink out of.
Yep.
And so we had 5 of those lined up in front of us, and my buddy was making vodka cranberries, like super strong vodka cranberries, and he was just chugging one of those anytime he had to drink, and we were like, man, you gotta sleep here tonight. Like you can't. And then also, please don't do this.
Poisoning.
My brother-in-law was like, he played a round of it, and he was like, this is fun. College kids are gonna play this with vodka and die. I was like, yeah,
that's fair. So do you have like a warning?
We do. We said, well, it says always drink and play responsibly on the box, and like the rules have a thing about knowing your limits or whatever. And that was kind of the other thought behind these flip cups too, is that if you're just drinking a mixed drink, you don't have to drink an ounce or a shot or whatever of what you're drinking. You could just take a sip from whatever.
It'd be the equivalent.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I would do.
Or even like have 3 equal one drink, something, or one shot.
Yeah, because I like that it's a drinking game, but for me, the strategy is more fun. So I don't like get mad when I play this with a friend who's drinking water, and I'm like, oh, you're not, you're cheating, or like, who cares? Like, it's just a party game. So
absolutely. Do you have any more questions, Lee?
No, I mean, this is so cool. I love that you have this as well as the comedy thing going on. It's cool.
Absolutely.
Like.
And where can we find your podcast? Is it just on the website? Can you find
we're on
iTunes?
We're on Podomatic. We're on iTunes. We have a couple podcasts that are kind of on hiatus right now. We're going to try and like record a bunch of episodes and release them seasonally.
Yeah.
But I have a ton of episodes for a podcast, a beer related podcast that I've done called Rhythm and Brews, where we talk about music and beer and kind of pairing those things. And then thanks, and then my wife and I do one called Double Date, where we interview another couple about like a favorite date movie that they have, but also like it's like basically a romantic if a romantic comedy was a podcast.
I love it.
And then we're doing a Star Wars one right now. We do a Star Wars podcast called Same Old Hope, where we rewatch one movie in the run up to the new movie coming out in December. Oh wow, that new movie is coming out in December, right? Yeah. See, opinions on the new trilogy. What are your opinions? I know you're a big detractor on Last Jedi.
I mean, I'm a Star Wars.
He's a huge hater.
Please, I prefer Star Wars truther. And